Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today's day 45 in our 90-day SAT Prep series. Today I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the Math No Calculator section for SAT Practice Test 6. So what I mean by a walkthrough is yesterday I told you how I would pace the Math No Calculator section and the strategy I would use as far as the order of questions I would do and things like that. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the Math No Calculator section of SAT Practice Test 6, and I'll be going through it as I would if I were taking the test. So keep in mind, you're going to want to have a notebook out, as well as possibly a workbook out, but really what I want you to be focusing on is how I'm approaching it, how I'm managing my time, and how I pace it. So really, we talked a lot about solving problems and accuracy and math equations and all of that in pretty much the 45 days before today. At this point, we're kind of transitioning in our SAT prep course now more into time management and pacing for a week or two or maybe a couple weeks. Really trying to teach you how to manage your time. Now that you know how to solve these problems, how are we going to make sure we're managing our time so that we can solve them in that 25 minutes accurately and make sure we have time to check our work as well. So we're going to have the reading section is going to be after this. So we're going to do, basically I'm going to be doing a 25-minute walkthrough as I would. Make sure you take notes on things I do. So take notes on my order of questions, take notes on how I do things to save time, efficiency, all of that. And then after that, we'll switch to the SAT reading section. So make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And we're going to start in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, Salim wants to purchase tickets from a vendor to watch a tennis match. The vendor charges a one-time service fee for processing the purchase of the tickets. The equation T equals 15n plus 12 represents the total amount T in dollars Salim will pay for n tickets. What does 12 represent in the equation? I see 12 as my intercept, so 12 must be that one-time service fee. So I look at my answers. I see B is the amount of the service fee in dollars. B will be my correct answer for number 1. All right, question 2. A gardener buys 2 kinds of fertilizers. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler materials by weight, and fertilizer B contains 40% filler materials by weight. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contain a total of 240 pounds of filler material. Which equation models the relationship where X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A and Y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B? Okay, well that means X goes in for A, Y goes in for B, and I see I have 0.6x plus 0.4y equals 240. You saw me make that equation as I read through my problem, which is what I recommend you do as well. Okay, so my answer for 2 there is going to be B. All right, question 3. What is the sum of complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i? Okay, we're summing them, so I'm going to add 2 and 4. That's going to give me 6. Next, I'm going to add 8i and 3i. That's going to give me 11i. So I got 6 plus 11i. Answer there is going to be C. All right, question 4. In the equation above, P and T are constants. Which of the following could be the value of P? All right, well, I see I got 4x squared. In order to get 4x squared, I'm going to have 2x times 2x. So a value of P then is going to have to be 2 because it'd be 2x. So therefore, P is going to be 2. Answer for 4 then is going to be A. All right, number 5. Which of the following is the graph of the equation y equals 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? This minus 5 means I'm going to have a negative y-intercept or a y-intercept below 0. I see I don't have that in A. I can get rid of A. I don't have it in C. I can get rid of C. I have it in B and D. Now what is my slope? It says that my slope is 2x, which is a positive slope. I see B has a negative slope, so B is wrong. My answer then must be answer choice D. So D will be my answer for 5. All right, question 6 is over, where is question 6? Question 6 down here. If x equals 2/3 y and y equals 18, what's the value of 2x minus 3? Okay, x equals 2/3 y, y is 18. I'm going to plug 18 in for y. 2/3 times 18. 2/3 times 18 is going to give me x equals 12 then. If x is 12, I go 2 times 12 is 24. 24 minus 3 is 21. Answer for 6 must be A. All right, question 7. A bricklayer uses the formula n equals 7LH to estimate the number of bricks n needed to build a wall that's L feet long and H feet high. Which of the following expresses L? I shouldn't have even read that. I should have looked down here, seen that we had L equals, we're just solving for L. So solving for L, then I'm going to divide each side by 7H. So divide each side by 7H. And I see that L then equals N over 7H. So N over 7H, I see that that's answer choice C. So C will be my answer for 7. All right, question 8 is up here. Okay, we've got a table. Table shows the values for the functions w and t. For which value of x is w of x plus t of x equal to x? Okay, I'm just looking to sum these and get them equal to this. So whatever one is equal is going to be my answer. I see 1, -1 plus -3. That's going to give me -4. That does not equal 1. Option 2, we have 2 equals 3 plus -1. 3 plus -1 is 3 minus 1. That does equal 2, so that is correct. So ask for the value of x. X is going to be 2 then. So B would be my correct answer for number 8. Okay, number 9. We've got if the root of x plus the root of 9 equals 64, what's the value of x? Okay, root 9 is 3, root 64 is 8, so I've got root x plus 3. I'm going to subtract 3 from each side. Now I've got 5 equals square root of x. I know that I'd square each side. 5 squared is 25, so my answer there is going to be C. So C will be my answer for 9. Keep in mind at this point I've reached numbers 1 through 9, so at that point I go down to my free response section, and I'm going to answer 16 through 18. So I'm going to go find that. Okay, that's what I recommended in that pacing video yesterday. If you didn't watch the pacing video yesterday, go watch that. Okay, we have if a to the power of b over 4 equals 16 for positive integers a and b, what's one possible value of b? Okay, well, a could be 16, in which case I'd have 16 to the power of 1, which I would need to have b as 4 then, because 4 over 4 is 1. So possible value for b is going to be 4. Okay, next we go down, we got 17. What value of t is the solution of the equation above? Okay, so we've got 2/3 t equals 5 over 2. I'm going to multiply each side by 3 over 2 to solve for t. Okay, that gets rid of that. Multiply by 3 over 2. 5 times 3 gives me 15. 2 times 2 gives me 4. I get 15 over 4. So 15 over 4 there will be my answer. So that's what I'll plug in on my bubble sheet, 15 over 4. All right, next up we've got question 18. Okay, in the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. What is the length of CE? Okay, so I've got right angle there, right angle here. I see that these are similar triangles because they're going to have that same measure there, same measure here. Okay, so similar triangles. What's the value of CE? Okay, that's my hypotenuse. I see I have a 6 here and I have an 8 here. I know that 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, and then the square root of 100 is 10, so I have a 10 there. Asked for CE. I see I have 6 to 18, so that's multiplying by 3 from my smaller to larger. So I multiply my hypotenuse by 3 then, and that's going to give me my hypotenuse of C to E, or C to E. So 10 times 3 gives me 30. So my answer for 18 is going to be 30. Okay, at that point, I'm going to quick glance at 19 and 20 like I talked about yesterday, see if they're easy or not. Okay, I see 19. 19 looks fairly easy. It's very, very short. How many liters of a 25% solution must be added to 3 liters of a 10% solution to get a 15% saline solution? Okay, so I wrote it out as I read it. That's what I recommend you do as well. X in this case is representing my liters of that 25% saline solution. So now at this point, I go ahead and I just solve for X. So I'm going to do 15 times 3 gives me 45. 15 times X gives me plus 15X. 3 times 0.1 gives me 0.3. Or I'm sorry, this should be 0.15. That should be 0.15. This should be 0.45. And this should be plus 0.15X. Okay, I forgot about that. Since it's 10%, I did 0.1 since I also did 0.25 and 0.1 here. All right, and that should be 0.15. Yep. All right, so at this point, set them equal. 0.25x is there. 0.25x plus 0.3. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and subtract 0.15x from each side to keep that coefficient in front of x positive. 0.25x minus 0.15x gives me 0.1x. I'm going to subtract 0.3 from each side. 0.45 minus 0.3 is going to give me 0.15. At that point, I divide each side by 0.1. Divide by 0.1. 0.15 divided by 0.1 is going to give me 1.5. So 1.5 will be my answer for 19. 1.5. 1.5. And that looks sloppy, so I'm going to rewrite it so you can see it better. 1.5 is my answer there. Okay, now we got question 20. We're going to quick glance at that one as well. We got points A and B lie on a circle with radius 1. Radius 1. An arc AB has length pi over 3. What fraction of the circumference of the circle is the length AB? So AB is pi over 3. We know that that's our arc length. We're asked for the fraction of the circumference is that arc length. Well, our circumference is always going to be our diameter times pi, or 2 times our radius times pi. We know if our radius is 1, our diameter is 2, so that means that our circumference is going to be 2 pi. So we're going to do pi over 3 divided by 2 pi. That's the same as doing pi over 3 times 1 over 2 pi times 1 over 2 pi. We know pi's are going to cancel there, and we're going to have 1 over 3 times 2, which is 1 over 6. So my answer there would be 1 over 6. Okay, at that point, I go back and I answer then 10 through 15. Okay, so this is just like I talked about in my pacing video yesterday. So if you didn't watch that, you need to go watch that before I continue on. Okay, we got Jamie is preparing for a bicycle race. His goal is to bike an average of at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks. So that 4 weeks, we have to multiply then by that 280 to get the total number of miles that he has to ride over this total of 4 weeks. Okay, so we can put a 4 here, or we could have put the 4 on our other side in the division, right? So put it as the denominator on the other side. So we know that he's biking 240 miles the first week, 310 the second week, and 320 the third week, plus 320. And then it says what can be used to represent the number of miles X Jamie can bicycle on the fourth week then to meet this goal. So we can set it up as his total that he bikes is going to have to then be greater than or equal to that 280 times 4. So let's look for an answer choice that has that. We see that we've got options. Option D has that exactly, actually. So D would be our correct answer there. Another way that it could have been written is we could have taken our 4 from our right side, divided each side by 4, and put this right here over 4. But we see that that is not an answer choice. So we can go ahead and get rid of A, B, and C. Our answer for 10 then has to be D. All right, question 11. The vertex of the parabola in the xy plane above is 0 and C. Which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation y equals negative A x minus b squared plus C? All right, well, I see immediately since my graph is opening up, that means that this a in front of x squared has to be positive, okay? Which means if I have negative a times some x squared, which will be x squared since it's x minus b squared, then that's going to open downward. So I can go ahead and get rid of a because that says open upward. I can get rid of c because it says open upward. So now I'm between b and d. I see that they both have c. The only difference is whether b is positive or negative. So I go up and I take a look. I've got x minus b here. So that minus b is telling me that I'm going to have a positive b for my vertex, okay? So B would be my correct answer there. We know here that this is vertex form, right? This equation right here is vertex form, and we're always going to do x minus whatever our vertex is, okay? So in vertex form, it's always x minus whatever our vertex is squared. So in this case, our vertex then must be B. So our answer then has to be answer choice B. All right, going up, we got question 12. Which of the following is equivalent to 4x squared plus 6x all over 4x plus 2? All right, so what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to find what's equivalent to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide. Okay, so we have 4x plus 2 out. We've got 4x squared plus 6x in that box. Okay, so 4x squared plus 6x. So what times 4x gives me 4x squared? Well, that would be multiplying by x. Okay, so I see all of them have that. Next, I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to subtract then 4x squared because I multiply this x by that 4x. X times 2 gives me positive 2x. So I have 6x minus 2x. 6x minus 2x is going to give me positive 4x. Now I have to get rid of that positive 4x. So I can go ahead and do plus 1. So I have x plus 1. 1 times 4x is going to give me minus 4x. And then 1 times 2 will give me a positive 2. So I'll have minus 2 then. So I'll have a 0 here. 0 minus 2 then is going to give me negative 2. So I see that my answer then is going to be right here. Okay, that's going to be D for number 12. X plus 1, and then I'm going to have that minus 2 over 4x2 plus 2 as my remainder. So answer for 12 there is going to be D. All right, question 13. In the equation above, t is a constant. If the following has no real solutions, which of the following could be the value of t? Well, to solve for the value of t here, for where there's going to be no real solutions, what we have to do is we have to use that rule of b squared minus 4ac. So we know then if it's going to have no real solutions, it's got to be b squared minus 4ac then has to be negative. Okay, so that means that it's going to have to be less than or equal to 0. So in order for that to be negative, and one moment here, it looks like my clock on my screen just went out, so I'll do my best to go off the time that I have in another part of my screen if I can find it. Okay, I see I've got that time going. All right, so we've got b squared minus 4ac. We know that it's got to be negative then. Well, if b squared minus 4ac has got to be negative, then what we do is we take b, which is negative 4. Now keep in mind this is when it's set equal to 0, so we got to subtract t from each side. So we can go ahead and rewrite this 2x squared minus 4x minus t has to equal 0. We know b is going to be that negative 4, so we're going to have negative 4 squared gives me 16. 16 minus 4 times a, 4 times, or negative 4 times a, which is 2, gives me minus 8. And now I've got c, which I see is negative t. So that negative t then gets plugged in right here. Say I get negative t there. I go ahead and cancel out my negatives to create a positive. So now I've got positive 8 times t, and that's got to be negative, so we can basically, or equal to, or it does have to be negative, I'm sorry. It can't be equal to 0, I miswrote that. It's got to be negative. So that's got to be negative, so we know that's got to be less than 0. In order for that to be less than 0, that t then is going to have to be 2 or more, okay, because, or I'm sorry, negative 2 or less. Man, it's got to be negative 2 or less because 8 times negative 2 gives me negative 16, which gives me 0, so it's got to be less than negative 2. It has to be less than negative 2. My only answer that's less than negative 2 is A, so 13, my answer there is going to have to be A. All right, 14. All right, we've got a laundry services buying detergent and fabric softener from its supplier. The supplier will deliver no more than 300 pounds in a shipment. Okay, that means 300 pounds has to be more than however many pounds my shipment is. The detergent weighs 7.35, so 7.35 D for detergent. and each container of fabric softener weighs 6.2 s, so plus 6.2 s gives me my total weight. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent, so the number of detergent wants to be at least greater than 2 times the number of fabric softener, so 2s. Let D represent detergent, S represent fabric softener, D and S are non-negative. Which of the following best represents the situation? Okay, I've got to have 300 being greater than or equal to. I see that I've got that equation not in C and not in D because those have the wrong D and S, but I do have it in A and B. Next, I need to have D being greater than or equal to 2S. I see that I have that in A. So my answer there is going to be option A. All right, next we got 15. Which of the following is equivalent to A plus B over 2 squared? This one right here, if you remember back to our first equation week, we talked about the equation for this. That's going to be A squared, then plus 2 times B over 2. Okay, those 2 cancel, and I got B, or AB, I'm sorry. That's going to be times A as well. Okay, so we're going to have 1 AB, so it's going to be A squared plus AB then. And then I got B over 2 times B over 2. So that's going to be B over 2 squared, which will give me B squared over 4. So my answer then for 15 is going to have to be answer choice D. So let's just go ahead and find which one matches. We see the only option that matches what we got is D. Okay, so that A times A is going to give me A squared, and then B over 2 times B over 2 is going to be B squared over 4. So that's what gets me right there. And then as far as how I get AB, that's going to be, we're going to have this A times B over 2. That gives me AB over 2, and we're going to have 2 of those since we have to multiply it by itself. So answer there will be D. All right, so as you can see, I finished up all my questions at that point, and that took me right around 15 minutes, so I've still got about 10 minutes left. So if you saw my pacing video yesterday, that's what I recommended you do. I recommended that you try to finish with right around 10 minutes left, 8 minutes left. That was ideal. So you see that I've done that. So at this point, what I would do if I were taking this paper pencil and it was the real SAT, at this point what I would do is I would go back to number 1. So I'd go back to number 1. And what I would do is I'll zoom out so you can see this better. I'd go back to number 1. I'd have my test booklet or my answer bubble sheet next to me. I'd go through and I'd make sure all my answers matched. Okay, so I'd go through, I'd see B, make sure 1 matches B, make sure 2 I wrote B in for my answer sheet, make sure 3 I wrote C, make sure 4 I wrote A. Now keep in mind, I'm saying this out loud because this is me doing a walkthrough and this is what I do. 5, I'd make sure I have D on my answer sheet. 6, I'd make sure I have A on my answer sheet. 7, I'd make sure I have C on my answer sheet. 8, I'd make sure I have B on my answer sheet. 9, I'd make sure I have C on my answer sheet. 10, I'd make sure I have D on my answer sheet. 11, I make sure I have B on my answer sheet. 12, I make sure I have D on my answer sheet. 13, I make sure I have A on my answer sheet. 14, I make sure I have A on my answer sheet. 15, I make sure I have D on my answer sheet. 16, I make sure I have 4 on my answer sheet. 17, I make sure I have 15 over 4 on my answer sheet. 18, I make sure I got 30 on my answer sheet. 19, I make sure I have 1.5 on my answer sheet, and 20, I make sure I have 1 over 6 on my answer sheet. Okay, so at that point, I've gone through, I've checked to make sure I had all my bubbles. Now at this point, what I can do is I can go through and check my work on all my problems. So that's what I'm going to do because that's what I'd recommend you do. So let's run through number 1. We're asked for what 12 represents in this equation. We see I already underlined that it's going to be a one-time service fee. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to switch to the color blue so you can see what I'm doing on my second pass through. Okay. So I see I'm asked for what 12 represents. I go through, I see my equation. I see 12 is going to be an intercept. I see that that's going to be my one-time service fee. So answer B is going to be correct then. So I've checked that one. Number 2. All right, I've got a gardener. He's got 60% filler materials is fertilizer B, 40% is fertilizer A. Or, I'm sorry, fertilizer A is 60%, fertilizer B is 40%. So fertilizer A is 60%, B is 40%. A total of 240 pounds of filler materials. So that's telling me that I'm going to have 0.6 times A. It says that X is fertilizer A. It says Y is fertilizer B. So my equation then would be 0.6 times X, since X is fertilizer A, plus 0.4 times fertilizer B, which is Y, has to equal that 240. I see that I have that with answer choice B for number 2. Okay, so at that point then I go ahead and move on. I check 3. Okay, I check 3. My mouse isn't working. Let me just fix my mouse. All right, there we go. Okay, now I can go check 3. What's the sum of the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i? Okay, 2 plus 4, that's going to be 6. That's correct. 3i plus 8i, that's going to be 11i. So that's going to be correct there. C is correct. Okay, so now I've checked that one. I've also checked 2. I'll put a check mark next to that so you see that I've checked that. Now I got 4. In the equation above, P and T are constants. Which of the following could be the value of P? All right, well, I'm going to quick take a look. I see that I have a 4x squared here. Therefore, then I know that my P is going to have to be 2, because 2x times 2x is going to give me 4x squared. So answer there is going to have to be A for number 4. All right, now I've got question 5, so I just checked that one. Question 5, which of the following could be the graph of y equals 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? Okay, I'm going to have a negative y-intercept, and I'm going to have to have a positive slope. Since it's 2x, D is going to be correct. Just check that one. Okay, now I've got question 6. So I've got x equals 2/3 y, y is 18, 2/3 times 18 is 12. What's 12 times 2? That's 24. 24 minus 3 is 21. Check number 6. 6 is correct. 7, a bricklayer is using this equation here. That's n equals 7 over LH. I'm asked for what L equals. I divide each side by 7H. N over 7H should be my answer. Check, make sure I got that. I see that I do. So that one's checked. 8. All right, I'm asked for which value of x does w of x plus t of x equal x. I'm going to check my answer. So I've got 3 plus -1. That's going to be 2. I see that does equal 2, so that answer is checked now. Okay, number 9. Let me just check. I lost time on my screen. It looks like I've got about 6 minutes left, I believe. So we've got now if root x plus root 9 equals root 64. Root 64 is going to be 8. Root 9 is going to be 3. And then I've got that plus root x. Subtract 3 from each side. 8 minus 3 is 5. 5 equals the square root of what? Square root of 25 is equal to x. So answer there C. That's checked as well. Okay, at this point, I'm going to quick switch over and I'm going to check my answers for my free response 16 through 18. Okay, 16. I've got a to the power of b over 4. It says a and b are positive integers. What's a possible value of b? Well, if a is 16, 16 to the 4 over 4 is 16 to the first. Okay, and that does equal 16, so that means that I'm going to have b equal 4. That's correct as well. 17. What value of t is the solution to the equation above? Okay, I've got 2/3 t. I'm going to have to multiply by my reciprocal, so that's going to be 3 over 2. That converts that to a 1. Right, now I've got 5 over 2 multiplied by 3 over 2 as I see here. 3 times 5, 15. 2 times 2, 4. 15 over 4 is my answer. That's checked as well. 18. In the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. Which of the following is the value of CE? All right, I'm going to go look. I've got a 10, 8, 6 triangle, so I have to have 10 as my hypotenuse. I know that from memorization. I see I've got 6 to 8. Okay, or 6 to 18, so that's a 3 times. I got a 3 times then my hypotenuse. 10 times 3 is going to give me 30. 30 is correct. Okay, at that point, I'm going to run down to 1920. Check those real quick. Okay, I've got a 25% saline solution that must be added to 3 liters of a 10%. Okay, so I'm going to write that as 0.25 times my x, which is my saline solution, times that 3 liters of 0.1 or 10% saline solution. Okay, that's got to equal a 15% or a 0.15 times 3 plus x, okay, because x is whatever my saline solution I'm adding is. Okay, I run that. That's going to give me 0.45. I subtract that 0.3 from the other side. That gives me 0.15. Subtract 0.15x from each side. That's going to give me 0.1x. 0.1x, I divide each side by 0.1. 0.15 over 0.1 is 1.5. That's correct. That's checked. All right, now we've got question 20. So now we've got A and B. We see that we've got an arc with pi over 3. What fraction of the circumference of the circle's length, arc B? That's going to be pi over 3 then, times 1 over 2 pi, because my circumference is my diameter times pi, radius is 1, diameter is 2, 2 pi. Pi is going to cancel. I got 1 over 3 times 2, that's 1 over 6. That one's checked. Now I'm going to go check 10 through 15 real quick. I'm going to go up, find 10. Where's 10? 10's right here. Okay, we see that we've got, we're biking at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks, so our total is going to be 280 then times 4. So 280 times 4. I see I've got that right here. We know we got to bike at least that much, so we need it to be greater than. And then I've got 240, 310, 320, all of my weeks plus x, which is going to be my 4th week. D is correct. That's checked as well. 11. Okay, I've got a positive A value because I'm opening upward, which means negative A means I open downward. That gets me down to B and D as option choices. I got to find my vertex, and in this case, my vertex, it's going to be B because vertex form states that x minus whatever that is. In this case, it's B. B would be our vertex then. So B is correct for 11. 11 is now checked. Okay, number 12. Which of the following is equivalent to this 4x squared plus 6x over 4x plus 2? Immediately, I know that x has to get multiplied by 4x to give me 4x plus 2. I see I have that all right here. Okay, next thing. That's going to give me, I subtract that, 4x times x, 4x squared, that cancels, x times 2, that's going to give me minus 2x, 6x minus 2x is going to be 4x. I got to then add a 1 to get rid of that. When I add that 1, I will have a plus 2, but it's negative since I'm subtracting. That's going to give me minus 2 as my remainder, only option with that plus 1 and that minus 2 as remainder. D is correct. D is checked, or 12 is checked. Now we got 13. Okay, I've given this up here. It has no real solutions. That means b squared minus 4ac has got to be less than 0. It has to be negative. I go ahead and put t on the same side, set it equal to 0. That way I can use this equation here, right there. I do that. I see that t is going to have to be negative 3 because negative 3 times negative 4 is going to give me positive 12. Positive 12 times, or I'm sorry, negative t times. If t is negative 3, negative 3 gives me a positive 3, a positive 3. Hang on a minute. All right, so we got b squared minus 4ac. We know that a is 2, so minus 4 times 2 gives me minus 8. Then my c value My C value, I've got minus 8 then, minus 8, and then my C value, I see I have negative t. If I have negative t, then if t is negative 3, that's going to give me a positive 3, which means I'd have negative 8 times positive 3, which is negative 24. B squared, b is negative 4, so that'd be 16 minus 24, that's negative 8, that is less than 0, so that's correct as well. Okay, now I can check 14. Keep in mind I'm at about a minute left, so I'm going to have to make sure that I'm really pushing it here. I'm going to check 15 first because that looks shorter. Okay, I see I've got this right here. I immediately recognize my addition of my squares, right? So I'm going to have a squared. I see that. I'm going to have 2 times a times b over 2. My over 2 is going to cancel with my 2, and I'm going to have plus ab. Only option with plus ab is d. D is correct. Okay, question 14. I see that I'm told that it can't be more than 300 pounds in a shipment. That means that it's got to be 300's got to be more. I see I've got 7.35 and a 6.2. I've got that here and here as well as here and here. And I see that my number of detergent has to be at least twice that of the fabric softener. So therefore, D's got to be greater than that 2 times S. So A is correct. Now I've checked all my answers. At this point, I believe I've got about a minute left. I lost my timer on my screen. So I checked my phone to see what time it was. So I believe I've got about a minute left. So at this point, I've answered all my questions. I've checked them to make sure that they agree with my bubble sheet, and then I've gone through and I've checked every single answer on this practice test. Okay, so if I was taking the real SAT and I did this, at this point, I've answered all of my questions. I've got about a minute left. With this minute, what I'd be doing is I'd be going through then, starting back at 1 and making sure all of my bubble sheets match what I have in my test booklet. Okay, so I'd go back through. I'd say 1B, 2B, 3C, 4A, 5D, 6A, 7C, 8B, 9C, 10D, 11B, 12D, 13A, 14A, 15D. That's what I'd go through and do. Okay, so keep in mind that right there, I'd do that with 16 through 20 as well, and that would be the end of my section. Okay, so you see that I followed that strategy I outlined in my pacing video yesterday. That's what I recommend you do. I recommend you follow what I did in that pacing video yesterday. I think my time is up about 10 seconds ago, which is fine, right? I accomplished everything that I wanted to. I really showed you how to pace there, so you saw what I did. I answered all my questions. I answered them within 15 minutes, so I had 10 minutes left to go back, check my work, make sure that it matched what was on my bubble sheet. So that was very important there. Notice how I went 1 through 9, then I went 16 through 18, then I checked 19 and 20. They looked easy, so I went ahead and did them. Then I went back and solved 10 through 15, just like I recommend doing. Okay, then after that I went through. I matched everything to my bubble sheet. After that I checked all my work. At that point, you've really done everything that you need to. So at that point, if there's like any time left, like in this case, there was about a minute left, I went back through, tried to just check everything, match it to my bubble sheet again. So that's what I'd recommend you do. So that was pretty much exactly how I'd recommend pacing it. I would say that was pretty much a perfect job of pacing. So that's what I would recommend you do. That was exactly basically how I would have done it if I were taking this practice test as a real test. So that right there, I hope that was helpful. So you saw me outline kind of what it would look like in that note section yesterday. So yesterday I gave you all the notes on how you should do it. This was really me showing you how it looks in practice. This is basically an inside look into how I would approach the no calculator section for the SAT were I taking it. So hopefully that was helpful. If it was, fantastic, and at this point we'll switch over to our other section. Today for the reading section, what I'll be doing is I'll be implementing or inputting a video I did on how to pace the SAT reading section. So in this video, I'll kind of go over how I recommend pacing the sections and the passages to kind of give you an idea of how you can kind of be very, very efficient, and then an idea of how to manage your time, because part of the SAT and part of the SAT reading section is being able to manage your time well. So in this video that's going to start playing in a few seconds here, that's where I'm going to really get into that. This video is uploaded separately on the channel as well, which is why I'm just kind of putting it in here, because I would be going over the same thing anyways. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let that video start playing for today's reading lesson. Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. In today's video, I'm going to be going over how to pace the SAT reading section. This is by a 1590 scorer. Me, I scored 1590 on the SAT. Today I'll be breaking down how I recommend pacing the SAT reading section, right? So obviously the SAT, it's a timed test. On the reading section, you'll be given 65 minutes. Obviously there are 52 multiple choice questions. In order to really score highly on that SAT reading section, then you're going to have to be able to manage your time very, very well. So in this video, I'll be really going over how to manage your time in order to hopefully get the best results that you can on test day. So with that, let's go ahead and get started on my notes for how to pace the SAT reading section. Okay, so a couple things we have to do first of all is understand the way that the test is set up and what we need to know. Okay, so obviously, like I said, 52 multiple choice questions. Okay, so we got 52 multiple choice questions. We've got 65 minutes then to answer all of those. Got 65 minutes. Hang on a minute, my pen isn't working. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. Okay, there we go. So we got 52 multiple choice questions. We have 65 minutes. So if we break that down, that means we're going to have a minute and a quarter per question on average. Now keep in mind, if we were to take that full minute and a quarter on every single question, that wouldn't leave us time to read the passage, and that wouldn't leave us time to go through and check our work at the end. Okay, so the next thing we have to understand then, what if we were to break it down by passage, right? Well, there are 5 passages in total, which would mean that you would have 13 minutes per passage if you're going to do it that way as well. Keep in mind, if you did that, then when you're done, you're not going to have time to go back and check your work either. Okay, so what are the different passages? Well, you're going to have 2 social studies and or history passages, 2 science passages, and then 1 United States or global literature passage. So usually one of the passages on the SAT reading section will have 2 passages connected or intertwined. Each one will be shorter than what it would normally be, and you have to read both of them and then compare, contrast, and analyze them. So what are successful strategies for pacing the SAT reading section? Well, first thing I want to go over is a successful strategy just for generally taking the SAT reading section. Now, I'm not going to dive into question types today or anything, but what I am going to do is I'm going to kind of give a general overview of an approach that I recommend doing and kind of how that kind of intertwines itself with how you pace for the SAT. So in order to understand how you're going to pace for the SAT, you also kind of have to understand how I would recommend approaching the reading section. All right, so obviously there's multiple approaches you can take to pacing the SAT reading section, and everyone's different, but there is something I would recommend that most people do, right? For most people, what I'd recommend doing is, for one thing, obviously the order that you read the passages in, it's going to matter significantly, right? So, for example, if you're stronger in science, you're going to want to read those science sections first. If you're stronger in literature, you're going to want to read the literature section first. If you're stronger in social studies and history, you want to read those sections first. So that's one thing that you can do, because you always want to go easiest to hardest, right? You always want to go easiest passage to your hardest passage. And what you're going to do is over time, by taking practice tests, so if you haven't taken practice tests, make sure you're taking practice tests and practice passages. Over time, you'll acquire data, right? You'll have data on how you did on each practice test and practice passage, and you'll be able to tell what order you should do the passages in, right? You'll be able to tell if you're stronger in science, or if you're stronger in literature, or if you're stronger in history. So over time, you use that data from your practice test to see where you're strongest. And then you're always going to want to go from where you're strongest to where you're weakest, or where the easiest points are to where the hardest points are. So if you're really strong in literature, start there. Okay, so now you're going to want to read the passage, okay? So here I'm just going to kind of give a short breakdown on how I sort of do my initial read through. So the way that I would recommend doing the SAT writing section is that I would recommend, first of all, reading the passage, right? So just reading through it. You're not skipping lines, but you're also not trying to predict, right? Your feelings don't matter. You're just reading through, seeing what it says. Don't reread, because you don't know, say that you get confused at some part. I wouldn't recommend rereading, because you could reread there and it might not end up being important, so then you just reread for nothing. Okay, I recommend writing little to no notes on your initial read through. Keep in mind I'm talking about your initial read through on this. And I also recommend staying very, very interested in the passage, because if you're interested in the passage, you're going to remember it better. As far as writing little to no notes, what I mean by that is, as you read through, try to never stop reading. So on your initial read through, try to never stop reading. That means you can underline, circle things, box things, but just try to always keep reading. Okay, so now we're going to really get into the pacing. Okay. So here's what I recommend as far as pacing the SAT reading section. So the first thing you're going to need to do is, obviously, you're going to need to read the passage. Okay, some people start with the questions. I do not recommend doing that. I really do not at all. I always recommend reading the passage first. Okay, so you're going to read the passage. You can make annotations, as I said, underlines, circles, squares, but overall you should never stop reading, and it should take you less than 4 minutes ideally, and even more preferably right around 3 to 3.5 minutes. 3 to 3.5 minutes, if you can read your whole passage in that amount of time, that's going to be really, really good. That's going to set you up to do well as far as pacing. Now you're going to want to aim to answer all of your questions per each passage in 9 to 11 minutes. Okay, the reason why you want to take about 9 minutes or 10 minutes or 11 minutes on each passage is because by doing that, you're going to leave yourself with 20 to 10 minutes to check any questions that you skipped or were unsure of. So I know you may be thinking, skipping questions, what does that mean? Well, if you come across a question on the SAT reading section and you're really struggling with it and you're not really sure at all really what the answer is, you're just going to want to skip it on your initial read through. Keep in mind, this is your initial read through that you want to skip it on. Okay, so what I mean by that is kind of your first pass through the test, right? So your first pass through the test, you're obviously going to go through all 5 passages on that first pass. And then once you're done, like I said, if you're completing each passage in 9 to 11 minutes, you're going to have 20 to 10 minutes to go back through and check questions you skipped or were unsure of. So if you have to skip a question, you can do that, because by doing this, you should still have some time at the end to go back and work through them. Okay, but keep in mind, if you're going to do that, you must complete each passage in right around 9 to 11 minutes. All right, so if you do that, obviously you'll have time at the end, which I'll get into more about what you'll do with that time at the end later. But let's go ahead and keep on reading. So you're going to want to do the passages in the order they're easiest to you. I already talked about that, now let's say, break it down. Okay, so you're going to do the passages in the order that are easiest to you. Now we're going to break down how to approach each passage. Okay, so let's say that we're doing a passage. What we're going to want to do is answer the questions in the order they appear in each passage. So we're not going to want to be jumping from, let's say that we were doing passage 1 and it was questions 1 through 10. We don't want to do 1 and then do 10 and then do 3 and then do 7 and then do 5 and then go back and do 2. We don't want to be jumping around like that. We just want to answer the questions in the order they appear in each passage. So what I mean by that too is I don't mean, when I say order they appear in each passage, I don't mean like in the passage. I mean just answering them 1 through 10, right? So just going chronologically from 1 or sequentially. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. Okay, and then you're going to want to skip any questions that you feel very, very unsure of after 30 seconds. So say that I'm reading a question and I've pretty much been on this question for 30 seconds and I still have no clue what I'm supposed to do. Then just star it so that you know to come back to it, and then skip it. Okay, so star it and then skip it. So you got to start in your test booklet, and then when you have time at the end, that's when you come back to it. Okay, so when you have time at the end, that's when you come back to it. Because if you have no clue what you're doing after 30 seconds, I would say it's not very likely that you're going to gain anything by just staying on that question. Okay, next, you're going to want to try not to skip more than 3 questions per passage, because if you're spending 9 through 11 minutes on each passage, but you're skipping more than 3 questions, you're not going to have enough time at the end to go back and answer those questions. So you're going to want to try to not skip more than 3 questions per passage. Ideally, try not to skip more than 2. But if you have one passage that's just really difficult and you have to skip 3, that's okay. But then keep in mind, on another passage, try to not skip more than 2 or more than 1 then, or any if you can. So if you read through a question a second time, right, let's keep in mind that this is talking about still that first pass, so you haven't answered all of the questions on the test yet. You're still on your first pass. If you read through a question a second time, you still have no clue what it's asking, obviously, once again, skip it and come back to it at the end. That really just pairs along with that 30 seconds question. Okay, that's where that's pairing with, is when to skip. If you read through it twice, still doesn't make sense to skip it. If you really unsure after 30 seconds, skip it. Those are 2 situations where you want to skip it and then come back to it at the end. Okay, so now let's say that you've gone through your first pass, you have 20 minutes left or 15 minutes left or 10 minutes left. Okay, what do you want to check in those final minutes? Okay, the first thing I recommend doing, and in order to explain this too right here, I actually need to go down and I need to explain something as far as how to save some time. Okay, so I talk about this on pretty much every single pacing video that I make for the reading section, the writing section, the math with calculator, math without calculator. If you haven't seen those, you should go check those out. Those are on our channel as well. But I talk about having a bubbling strategy. Okay, so this is kind of a strategy that I use. I personally use this on the SAT because it saves me time and it'll save you time as well. But it goes along with a couple of things. So the first thing you need to understand is that you need to bring a watch, or I guess I shouldn't say you need. You should bring a watch to the SAT test center. And here's why. First of all, it's got to be a mechanical watch. It can't be electronic and it can't make noise. But you should bring a watch to the SAT because what you can do is you can set it to start at midnight at the beginning of each section. Now by doing that, you're going to know exactly how much time you have left. Okay. So that's just one thing, and the reason that you do that is because of the bubbling strategy. Okay, it also has to do with pacing because obviously you can see how much time is going, but make sure you have a watch on test day is really the big thing there. Just do it because it's super helpful for pacing. You need to know it because there's not guaranteed to be a clock in your room. So if you're going to pace, you need to have a watch, obviously. But now let's talk about bubbling strategy. So yes, there's a bubbling strategy. Yes, I'm a try hard at the SAT. You need to have a bubbling strategy, and here's why. Okay, here's what I do. I recommend circling your answers in your test booklet. Okay, so you're going through your test booklet, right? I'll just draw a little test booklet here so you can kind of see it. Okay, that's your test booklet. Okay, so you're going through your test booklet. Okay, you've got A, B, C, and D. Okay, you're going to go ahead and circle A there. Let's say that you circled B for this question, you circled C for this question, you circled A for this question, right? So you got about 4 questions here, right? We'll make it question 1, another question there, another question there. So you've got about 4 questions there on each page, right? Each page is going to have right around 4 questions or 5 questions. So what I recommend doing then is once you've answered those 4 or 5 questions in your test booklet, then over here, let's say that you've got your answer sheet. So I'll go ahead and switch colors actually. I'll make this in blue. Okay, let's see that your answer sheet over here is in blue. Then what you're going to do is after you've answered those 4 questions or so on each page, Okay, so however many questions there are on each page, once you've answered all of the questions on one page, then go through and then bubble them in on your answer sheet. Okay, because that's going to save you time because you only have to go from your test booklet to your answer sheet to fill in answers once per page, versus if you're doing it after every question, you're going to have to do it 4 different times. Okay, so that's going to waste time. So by doing it this way, you can just see, okay, I went A, B, A, D. Then I just put in A, B, A, D, and then you're good. Versus the other way, you got to go A, B, B, A, D, D. So you see how much longer that took? So that's why I recommend doing that. It's going to save you, I'd say it probably is going to end up saving you at least a minute on the SAT in my opinion, versus bubbling in after every single question. Okay, so now I just want to get into one quick exception to this rule. This bubbling strategy is just watch the time as it gets towards the end. Once there's less than 8 minutes left, at that point, just fill in the bubble sheet after each question. Because with less than 8 minutes left, you don't want to get in a situation where you have to fill in 4 things on your bubble and you just run out of time. And now you have 4 correct answers, but you just didn't get to put them in on your answer sheet, so you don't get them counted towards being correct. So with less than 8 minutes left, that's when I abandon that bubble strategy and I just do it after every question. But hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, so with that, now we can go back and talk about what to check in the final minutes of the SAT reading section. So the first thing I recommend doing is checking your bubble sheet and matching it to your test booklet. So like I said, you're going to answer your questions in your test booklet, but then you're going to have to convert those answers or transfer those answers into your bubble sheet because your bubble sheet is what is actually scored with the SAT. So once you've finished, let's say you've got 20 minutes left, right? You just finished all of your questions. You got a couple of them that you skipped. You skipped, we'll say, right around 3 or 4, and you got like maybe 2 or 3 you're unsure of. What you're going to want to do then is you're going to go through and match your bubble sheet to your test booklet. So all the questions that you've answered, make sure that you have the same answer in your test booklet as you do in your bubble sheet. Now keep in mind that should take less than 60 seconds, maybe because this one's got 55 questions, maybe, or 52 questions, maybe it takes 70 or 75 seconds or maybe 90 seconds. But that's the next thing I'd recommend doing once you've kind of done your first pass. Because sometimes what people will do is sometimes they'll end up reading the wrong answer choice off and then filling in the wrong one or the wrong order on their bubble sheet, right? And that just happens sometimes. So that's just to make sure that that doesn't happen here. Okay, so that's just really a quick way to make sure you're not making a simple mistake. After that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to your skipped questions. So any questions you skipped, go back, find those, answer those. And then after that, go to the questions that you're just a little bit unsure of, right? There's always some questions where you're kind of like, I don't know, this one could kind of be between 2. So after you've gone through and you've kind of answered your skipped questions, the ones that you skipped and needed more time on, then go through, answer your unsure questions. And now after that, pretty much all the questions then you're feeling decently confident on, then just go through and check as many questions as you can, okay? So oftentimes what I find are, what I would recommend doing, right? Let's say that you've answered all your skipped questions, you feel confident in those. You've answered all the questions you were at least a little unsure of. You're confident in those now. So now you're pretty much confident in most of your answers. At that point, what I'd probably end up doing is I'd probably go through and I'd check my my questions that involve data tables, graphs, things like that. So anything with a scatter plot, data table, graph, any numerical information like that would be the next questions that I would check. So that's just me, but it's up to you there. So that pretty much covers, I believe that covers pretty much everything I wanted to say in this video. We will be doing, if you're watching this as part of our 90-day SAT prep series, you'll see that I think in a couple of days you'll see that we got a video up where I kind of go through a passage using this strategy, and you'll be able to kind of see it on that. If you're not watching this as part of our 90-day SAT prep series, I would highly recommend watching our 90-day SAT prep series. We cover the reading section, the writing section, the math without calculator, and the math with calculator. So you can find that in our channel. If you go under playlists, it'll be under there. So I would recommend watching that as well, because I believe that that would be helpful. So with that, hopefully this was helpful today. If it was, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. As always, any private SAT tutoring I'm doing and any private college admissions consulting I'm doing will be linked in the description, so you can find it there. And as always, make sure to have a good day.